thing that we have to do is give people a sense of their own agency and a sense that actually what you do matters and what you do can make a difference in your own life. And that on-ramp, that activation on-ramp leads to voting.
Welcome to the Practivist Pod, the practice of activism made practical.
Today, well, it's been a horrific week, so we're going to talk about the series of tragedies we witnessed over the weekend, Trump's morally repugnant response, and the response to his response. We'll also talk about the Vanity Fair bombshell, or was it a bombshell, and another overperformance in a down-ballot special election.
Then I have a powerful discussion with communications expert Anat Shenker-Osario about the rise of authoritarianism and weaponization of hate all around the world and how we stand up against it, not just by winning elections, but by building a movement for real change.
I'm Jess Craven.
I'm Steve Pearson.
Oh no, stay strong, it won't be long, yeah, we will build a better world.
Jess, this is like our holiday show here, for better or for worse. It's been a really difficult week, but we're going to take the next couple of weeks off after we do this show and come back stronger and better than ever in the new year. But we've got a big show today, and I'm guessing it's not going to be a short one either. I know I had a really good lengthy conversation with Anat Shenker-Osario, who is one of my favorite people, and I reached out to her because it's such a difficult week, and she's so good at talking about not just talking about things in a way that's really inclusive and acknowledges everyone's pain. She's just really great about talking these moments. So I reached out to her kind of last minute to have her on the show. What I didn't know when I reached out to her was she was actually right next to Bondi Beach on Sunday. And she was in Australia, and she left right before the shooting happened. Yeah. And was there with the government officials as they were doing their response and stuff, because she works with a lot of government officials both in Australia and New Zealand. So yeah. So so we
amazing.
We had a lot to talk about. I'm excited for everyone to hear it. But since we're off for the next 2 weeks, I want people to think of this maybe even as like a two-parter. Like you can sparse it up, but there's going to be a lot of
We'll try not to go that long, but yeah. But Anat is amazing. I do encourage people to listen to that interview. She's been very instrumental in teaching me how to do messaging, and I think a lot of people. So yeah,
yes, absolutely. How are you handling this week? I mean, you've put out some really great and like personal content around it, and I've appreciated that. How are you doing?
Yeah, it's funny. I did a video. It's not funny. Nothing is funny about what's happened in the last, 4 or 5 days.
I know what you meant. Yeah, of course.
But yeah, I did. I just, I find on social media that like the more raw the content, the more people seem to resonate with it. And I was really not gratified, but I made a video about Trump's response. I mean, there's all kinds of things that happened that were just horrific. But I made a video about Trump's response, his tweet that, the tweet heard around the world at this point in the most disgusting possible way. But it literally in my carpool clothes, which were basically my pajamas. I was basically still in my pajamas, but I just was in one of those moments where I was in the car and I was just like, I can't, like, what are we doing? And I made this video that was, it's gotten, quite a lot of response, and it's not just me. There's been this visceral, almost like a national retch as people just realize, like, what are we doing? Like, who is this fucking man? This vile person who, like, it almost felt like 10 years of disgust, just like all volcanoed at the same time. And it's really honestly a relief to see. It's a relief to see people finally acknowledging the absolute hideousness of this person who is running our country and has pervaded our politics. So yeah, it was personal for me. It obviously hit a chord. I think a lot of other people are having very visceral responses. And I don't know, Steve, I feel like the moment, as awful as it has been, might bear some fruit. I don't know if it like popped I keep wanting to say it popped a pimple, and that's such a horrible image, but like I feel that people who are not usually speaking up are speaking up. And thank God. So
Compelled to, because of the sheer depravity of those remarks. And of course, we're talking about his response to Rob and Michelle Reiner's murder, and just the tragedy around that is so unspeakable. All of the circumstances around it. And I want to say that we have, people who are very close to the Reiners in our orbit. And a lot of us who do this work here in Los Angeles have had contact with Rob Reiner, who's been very supportive. Obviously, he's been amazing on so many issues over the years. And there's people who we're close to who are very, very close to them. And so as all of us, whether, you were close to them or you're just looking at this, horrified as a human being with, compassion and empathy, to see that response, which we will not repeat, we will not post it on here. It was just compounded this tragedy in a way that is such a contrast to the leadership that we, expect at the smallest thing, in times of crisis and times of, national mourning or whatever. Yeah. We expect just some kind of statement of assurance from our leader that, we all are in this together. And this was so the opposite of that. I agree with you. The condemnations from Republicans were quick. Yeah. They were swift. They came out right away. There was, no way they could stand by this. Of course, Mike Johnson, is too busy to pay attention to it. So he hasn't said anything, really condemning it. So the hypocrisy is still, the craven, disgusting hypocrisy is still alive and well, but the cracks are there in a way that I have never seen before. And I will just say, knowing Rob Reiner's work in this space, and his work to try to help us save democracy, raise the alarm bells about Donald Trump and who he is and the sickness that he is, I think he would really appreciate that this moment, the tragedy that it is, I think is kind of poetic in a way. That Trump's attempt to bring this beautiful man down has created the biggest cracks that we have ever seen in his coalition.
Yeah, no, I think Catherine Grody said it perfectly. Mandy Patinkin's wife, I think it's Grody. God, I feel embarrassed that I don't have that name right. But
those two are great too.
Yeah, and they were also close to Rob Reiner and his family, and she made a video basically quoting from the moment from the McCarthy trials where the person who said, "Have you no decency?" and how that really ended the McCarthy era. This one person at this one moment just saying, "Have you no decency?" And I mean, McCarthy had been doing it for years, but at that moment, like enough different stuff cracked. And I feel that we are in that, I feel cautiously optimistic that we are in that moment right now where enough people are just saying, no, like this, no. There was a journalist on MS Now, I did a video about this too, who last night, it was sometime yesterday, his name is Vaughn, I can't remember his last name, but he was doing a report in front of the White House and just started listing the moments where Trump should have been empathetic and wasn't, and he just listed one after another, after another, after another, and then at the end basically said, like, this is a person with no empathy. And the relief I had seeing someone in the mainstream media just saying it. So all of these things together, it feels like something is cracking. And we need to keep saying it. We need to keep calling it out, because it needs to be called out. And we have called it out, but I feel that now is a moment when we can double down, and it might be more impactful. And
have a broader coalition to, I mean, we talk about things that we can agree on. It was, Epstein was the start, our desire to hold, pedophiles and sex traffickers accountable, goes across party, and this does too. Last week, we talked about, the forum that I was at in DC on political violence, the rise of political violence, with Governor Shapiro and Governor Cox of Utah. And there was a challenge to Governor Cox about Trump's response to the Charlie Kirk shooting, where, Charlie Kirk's wife actually said this beautiful thing in the eulogy about, how she forgives, the assassin. And then Trump followed that up with, well, I can't do that. I have too much hate, for my enemies.
I hate my enemies. Yeah.
Yeah. I hate my enemies. And Cox's response, Governor Cox's response to that was, I think if you talked to Trump, he would probably admit that kind of thing just isn't his thing. And I was, in the moment, I was like, you mean empathy? Yeah. You mean because he's psychotic? It's like he can't show basic compassion. Is that why it's not his thing? So
that's also bullshit. That's bullshit, because he can act like a compassionate person when it's someone he likes. He showed empathy about Charlie Kirk. That is a load of shit. God, these Republicans
it is a load of shit. Yeah.
No one yelled in the audience? Steve, where was your yelling? I would have been like, bullshit. That's bullshit. I mean, sorry, I know you're not that person, but that's bullshit.
I was an invited guest. I didn't want to yell.
I know, of course. And I don't even know that I would have done it, but boy, that is just
in the cathedral. We can go into that. There was yelling, but not about that. But there was some other protesters who were there standing up and yelling during that event as well.
Good for them. I support that.
But okay, well, let's talk about some Schadenfreude and some more like splits in this coalition, this MAGA coalition, with this great interview that Chief of Staff Susie Wiles decided to do, over 11 interviews with Vanity Fair.
Yeah.
I heard a breakdown.
We really want to talk about. Oh, sorry, go on.
No, I just heard a breakdown about this on the news, I think on MS Now last night, about like she must have just felt so confident that she was doing a great job, that she thought that this would go so well that she could just be candid and off the cuff because they're doing so much great stuff, but didn't really pan out that way for her.
I don't know. I mean, I am very cautious in my celebration about this article. First, the pictures are horrific. I mean, they're terrific, horrific pictures. The photographer deserves a Nobel Peace Prize. They're so unbelievably awful to look at, and intentionally so. I am literally haunted in my brain, like, cannot get that image. The one of Susie Wiles, the one of what's her name's lips. Oh, I mean, I'll never unsee that. And I think, photographer made some really good, deliberate choices that were superb. Did Susie Wiles know what she was doing? She is apparently a brilliant woman. She has enabled the rise of many very deeply malevolent political figures. I am not convinced she was caught. Oops. I just don't think someone like her oopses. So I don't know if she's either preparing us for... Someone said Trump's going to be in the Epstein files and they're trying to get out ahead of it. Other people think it's a distraction for the fact that he's going to go to war. I mean, maybe she got too comfortable and started saying stuff that she regrets, but I just don't trust anybody anymore. I just don't. I don't know. We'll see. But it definitely makes them look like a clown car. But, I mean, we already knew they were a clown car. I mean,
and we've seen that before.
Yeah, right. No one seems to care that they're a clown car. As long as they're getting their tax cuts, no one cares.
Yeah. And previous
Maybe.
staffers have come and gone and said similar things about the whole thing. But it still is shocking. And I don't know if you heard there was a quote that J.D. Vance had said to the photographer, saying, I'll give you $100 for each photo if you make everyone else look worse than me. and if it's Rubio, I'll give you 1,000.
Well, I don't know if the photographer succeeded in that because, man, that picture of J.D. Vance is rough. But yeah, they're all rough. I think the photographer was an equal opportunity in making them all look absolutely terrible. And unless
if you haven't read the article, go check it out, and definitely go on Vanity Fair to check it out so you can see the pictures, or don't. It is the holidays. We want sugar plums and fairies dancing in our head, not images of the Trump cabinet. So.
Super close up with gloss and it's just, I don't ever mock people about their appearances, but those photographs were deeply political. I mean, they just were. You can't argue that they weren't. So they were designed to make the people in the pictures ugly to reflect the ugliness of their morality, quite frankly. So bravo to the photographer. Hats off.
Bravo. All right. So we got some numbers this week, too, even though Trump has been working very hard to try to suppress the numbers. And he's also created an environment where people are questioning the accuracy of numbers coming from the federal government. And I heard on Marketplace on NPR, which I consider a trusted source, that there's actually, as much as they try to suppress the release of the numbers, there's no evidence that the numbers that are released are inaccurate. So right now, unemployment rate is at a 4-year high. Annual wage growth is the lowest it's been in 4.5 years. These are coming out. They reflect what everyone else is feeling. And coming into the holidays, of course, the biggest thing is these ACA subsidies that, will expire, and folks' premiums going way up, and, will kick a lot of people off of the ACA. They just won't be able to afford it. As we have talked about a lot on this show, and you have broken down very, very well. It's simply designed to kick people off of this insurance and drive them to private insurance and bolster the private insurance sector. And, we had a little hope right before we started recording. The Dems had another now famous discharge petition, one of the few tools that we have to force Mike Johnson to take votes that he does not want to take. This was one of the votes he did not want to take. And we got 4 Republicans to sign on to it, and tried to force the vote, but Johnson found a way to kick it to the new year. So those subsidies will expire before we're able to vote on them.
Right. And then there's some uncertainty. I mean, technically, a discharge petition requires a 7-day, what they call a curing period. So once you get that 218 signature, then you have to wait 7 days. So I think the vote today was to try to get around that procedurally, make an exception or force a quicker vote, because then people would not have to choose these new plans that are so very, very expensive. Bumping it into January gives Trump and Johnson more time to whip against it. It makes people have to sign up for these very, very expensive plans. I don't know if they can then back out of them. It's just really fucked up. If you're gonna save people, save them now. Friendly reminder, these guys have had, Johnson said something last night when one of their other votes failed. They were trying to add these amendments to another bill to extend the subsidies, and the amendments failed. And a reporter asked him about it and said, well, what, it really looks like people are going to have to pay these really incredibly expensive things. What do you have to say to them? All he could say was, we've been trying to get rid of the Affordable Care Act for 15 years, and I think it's right. just a bunch of mumbo jumbo. But what the admission there that Republicans have been trying for 15 years to get rid of the Affordable Care Act and have never been able to come up with a replacement. Ever. So do they have one now? No. Did they come up with one during the 2 months?
Not even ideas of a plan. Like
no,
nothing
not even ideas
close.
of a plan. They had 2 months where they refused to come to work, but they were getting paid. They could have all sat around and figured it out then, but did they? No. They have no fucking ideas. Like, I just don't understand when their voters are going to wake up and see that these are people who have no ideas. They know how to break things. They don't know how to fix them. And so we will not get a better healthcare plan until Democrats have full control. Period.
No. I'm going to help the Republicans right now. Okay. I don't like doing this because, I'm a Democrat but I'm going to help them. I have a healthcare plan for them that will be effective if they want to replace the ACA. It's called Medicare for All.
Yeah. They'll win a whole bunch of elections if they run on Medicare for all. Whoever grabs that and runs with it will be in power for the next, 40, 50 years.
Yeah.
Just do it. I told
and
Cory
we talk
Booker
health.
that.
We talk healthcare, of course, with Anat too, because she's in yet another country right now that provides free healthcare. So we do have some calls to make. I like. This is going to come up for a vote in January, and we definitely need those Republicans to stay strong on this, and we need to recruit some more Republicans. It's very tight. If I was again a I don't know why I keep putting myself as a Republican. I hate that, but
don't do it, Steve.
There should be an open revolt against Mike Johnson. Like, talk about a weak speaker.
Yeah, he's terrible.
I mean, inability to keep his caucus together. It's like the exact opposite of what they need right now when they're facing all these. All this enthusiasm from the Democrats and all this public sentiment on our side, but that's why he's losing, and that's why they will lose. So, but anyway.
And these people, once they get into a position of power, it's the same thing with Schumer and Jeffries. It is so hard to dislodge them because once you are in that seat of power, you're the speaker, you're the minority leader, whatever, you don't want to give it up. So he won't give it up. Now, Marjorie Taylor Greene has floated the idea of making her last act in Congress a vote, what is it called? A vote to remove him. And I wouldn't be surprised to see her do it. The discharge petitions, the fact that 2 have now successfully passed in, a month? It is so rare. When you used to talk about a discharge petition, people would be like, yeah, but it basically never works. And twice in a month, because people are so done with Mike Johnson, he should resign for sure. He is done, whether he knows it or not, but they don't have anyone better because the Republicans are a mess, man.
I know. He was like their 5th or 6th choice, even with that whole fiasco trying to find a speaker. And I don't have a whole lot of Marjorie Taylor Greene may do that just for herself, just to try to get some headlines and stuff. And so she might do that, but
she should.
She
should do it.
I'm not jumping on the Marjorie Taylor Greene's going to save us bandwagon.
Oh no, she's a horrible human being. She's awful. Yeah. She's also introduced this anti-trans bill they're voting on that would put doctors in jail for providing gender-affirming care. So absolutely fuck Marjorie Taylor Greene. Hi, fuck you.
There we go.
But
there we go.
Yes, do something good to mitigate some of the pure evil you have brought on the world, which is quite a bit of it. So, yeah. Anyway, I feel I've cursed a lot in this episode, and I'm sorry, but it's a curse-worthy week.
It's been a fucking brutal week, man.
It's been a really rough week. Yeah.
So this is where we are. But having said that, what a perfect segue into our reasons for hope. So, why don't I start? I'll let you finish it off because you've got a really good one that I didn't even know about. And I follow all the elections. So you have to hang in there with mine to get to Jess's really good one. But but mine's great too. California, once again, leading the way. I'm so proud of this state. And we're the 4th largest economy in the world. We have a lot of power to wield. We have a lot of influence over companies worldwide and corporations worldwide, which we do wield. But at this moment, when we're seeing measles outbreaks, which are unnecessary, we have I was going to say poor leadership at our health department, but poor is gross understatement of the reckless and terrifying leadership we have from RFK Jr. there. California has stepped up. They have hired former CDC officials. They're bringing on former CDC Director Dr. Susan Manarez to launch the Public Health Network Innovation Exchange. It's going to work to move California and the nation forward despite CDC's retreat from science, from basic science. And I don't know about you. I went and got a physical recently and talked to my doctor, and fortunately she was like, I don't follow the CDC. I'm not following the health recommendations. I'm looking to overseas. I'm looking to the European World Health and those agencies for recommendations now. But now they can look to California too, that follows the science and gives real recommendations. And we have the resources and the platform here to really be a major player in that and have major influence, not just in America, but all over the world. So that gives me a lot of hope at a time when we're seeing a measles outbreak. We're seeing the rise of, all these potential viruses. So hopefully that will make people feel better about traveling over the holidays too, because that's always sketchy.
Yeah.
All right.
I'm going to
What's your reason for hope?
My reason for hope is in Kentucky. Army veteran Gary Clemens.
Kentucky, you say?
In Kentucky. We had a special election. It wasn't on my radar because it was in a safely blue... Well, it wasn't a safely blue district, actually. It was a district that Kamala Harris won by 5 points. I don't know why I had not heard about this election. I guess people neglect Kentucky, and if you're from there, I'm sorry that we do that. But there was a special election for Kentucky Senate, so state Senate, and the candidate, Gary Clemens, the Democrat, Army veteran, won by 42 points. Oh, he overperformed by more than 42 points. So maybe that means he won by, anyway, massive overperformance in Kentucky.
Yeah.
This is a very big deal. Something we should really be paying attention to. This race wasn't even on the radar, so there wasn't a huge amount of energy or time put into it. He still overperformed by more than 42 points. That is insane. Hugely hopeful news for the midterms. Stick it out. Once we get to the midterms, we are going to see, I think, an absolute shattering of the order that we have right now. So, yay.
Yes. And it's up to us to keep that momentum going coming into the new year. Take that good feeling. All the hard work that you've done. I want to say before we kick it to the interview, I want to thank all of our listeners, everyone who, not only listens to us babble on every week, but actually takes those actions and gets out there. And whether you're protesting, whether you're participating in boycotts, whether you're knocking on doors, making phone calls, we started this year in a very, very dark place. We've been hit by a lot of horrors from this regime, and we have faced it with bravery and resolve, and the results have been evident. We have been overperforming in election after election. We've got to keep that up. There are cracks in this regime, but that also means that they will go to increasingly more desperate and despicable methods to stay in power. So enjoy the holidays. Be with your family, be with your community, celebrate the love we have for each other, the love that is at the core of our country and our shared humanity. And then let's, 26, man, new year, new Congress. Let's fucking do it. Okay. So, that's my diatribe. Having said all of that, now part 2 of our 2-part episode. I'm kidding. Throwing to our good friend, brilliant communication strategist, Anat Shenker-Osario. Anat Shenker-Osario is the principal of ASO Communications and host of Words to Win By podcast. She's an expert on why certain messages falter where others deliver. Her writing and research is profiled in way too many newspapers and magazines to mention, but she is also the author of Don't Buy It, The Trouble with Talking Nonsense About the Economy. Anat, it is so great to be with you, my friend. Thank you so much for joining.
Yeah, I'm happy to report I'm in the future. I'm
You
in
are.
New Zealand.
You
where
are in
it's
New
the future.
Zealand.
In the future, there's free healthcare.
Okay. One of many reasons to, be in New Zealand. But, like kidding aside, like when I asked you to join our show this week, it was because I really thought of you as the perfect person to discuss and help us talk about the tragedies of the last week. Another school shooting, this time at Brown, the tragic murder of Rob and Michelle Reiner, and Trump's just deranged, disgusting response, and the rise of anti-Semitism all over the world, highlighted by the mass shooting at Bondi Beach in Australia. But of course, what I didn't know is that you were in Sydney last Sunday, right next to Bondi, and left right before the horrific attacks. So let me just start asking my friend, how you're doing? Just doing a wellness check.
Yeah. So my family, we're Jewish, and my
Yeah.
family was blessed enough to live in the eastern suburbs. Bondi, as it's pronounced.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Is
Gosh.
It's okay. How would you
After all
know?
these years, I should know. Yeah.
It's all right. This is just proof that I actually lived there, right?
Mm-hmm.
So we didn't live there, but we lived a couple beaches over on this sort of phenomenal beach walk that they have. And I was in Australia for 2 weeks. I got there at the start of December. I've been doing all sorts of things with the Labour Party, which of course is the ruling party in power, which beat the incumbency trap earlier this year, and actually not only won as the incumbent party and sort of staved off the far right challenge, but won more seats than they have sort of ever in history, if I'm not mistaken. So
Wow.
a big repudiation of the right. And then I was on the beach in the morning, one beach over, and left before the Hanukkah lighting that I, am grateful to have not been
Yeah.
there, but also obviously completely and totally gutted and devastated for the Australian Jewish community, for the city, for the state. I think, to put it in a hopefully helpful American context, that beach is like Coney Island would be for us, or like Venice Beach would be for us, or the Navy Pier. It's like a place that if you're a Sydney sider, you've definitely taken your family. It's just kind of an iconic location that lots and lots of people go. Australia is historically, especially compared to the United States, a very, very safe place where, these kinds of things are extraordinarily rare. And yeah, I mean, I don't know what to say other than like horrific, gutted, so sad for kind of everyone touched by this. And yeah, anti-Semitism is real. It is an issue. It's a growing issue. And also we have to confront the fact that what my colleague and friend Sharon Goldsmith calls smokescreen anti-Semitism, essentially the weaponization of anti-Semitism, the make-believe when far-right leaders like Trump and Elon Musk and the Prime Minister of the Netherlands and other kind of far-right leaders in Europe, for example, make believe that they care about anti-Semitism purely as a pretext in order to shut down dissent, shut down the rightful and righteous call for human rights. It's a very complicated issue. And I think the main thing that I would say about Bondi is that it is a moment of witnessing the absolute horrors that hatred begets, and what it means when we vilify a group of people and we attack them on the basis of their faith. And it is also a moment of an amount of heroism and courage that, is truly stunning from, of course, the individual I think we've all seen on video who kind of took his life into his own hands to tackle one of the armed people without regard to, what would happen to him. He, of course, I'm glad to say, is going to make a recovery. He was not, shot in any sort of vital organs, but he was
Right.
shot. But also just, I think, probably what hasn't been reported as much, which is that behind the beach, there is like set of restaurants, as there often is on beaches. And a lot of the people who were there that day, they ran into the restaurants, ran to the kitchens, went out the back door. And behind that are a lot of residences. People live there. And pretty much uniformly, all of those residents just opened their houses, opened their flats. And people who were escaping the gunfire went into those houses, no questions asked, and were hidden out by perfect strangers. And so you had these clusters of perfect strangers just, protecting each other, writing it out. Of course, first responders who came immediately, even like in the midst of, the potential IEDs possibly detonating and just coming in there. So this heroic display of community care. And I think the major thing to take away, other than obviously prayers and wishes for the complete recovery of all the people who are still in the hospital receiving, to state the obvious, free medical care from the government system that exists in Australia,
Right.
is this is an example of what happens when, like I said, we vilify people on the basis of their faith. And if we're going to respect and honor the memory of the people who were taken, it behooves us and it requires us to never allow any other group of people to be vilified and scapegoated on the basis of their faith.
Right.
Because, of course, that's exactly what the far right in Australia is up to. And like clockwork, the Murdoch press, because he's, originally Australian, the guy behind Fox News, every front page piece in the various Murdoch publications and on Sky News was like, this is because of labor, this is because they recognize Palestine, this is because they've sort of allowed folks to protest and speak honestly about what's happening in Gaza. And it would be just the most repugnant, vile kind of slap in the face of the people who were killed to allow that kind of division and hatred.
Yeah. The response to the shooting by the government in Australia obviously shows an incredible contrast to how we responded here in America to the shooting at Brown or every other mass shooting that we experience. You were around that response, around the government officials and stuff too. Can you talk about the different responses?
Yeah. So, Australia has a parliamentary system, has a Westminster system, and it has a state-based system a little bit like the United States. So there are state governments, which, for example, in New Zealand, there are no states. It's too small. There's just one federal government. And so both at the federal level, so the PM, Albo, as they call him, his name is Albanese, but his nickname is Albo. Both Albo and the Premier, that's how they pronounce it, Premier, of New South Wales, which is the state that Sydney is in, immediately called back their respective parliaments. It's obviously they're on holiday right now. It's not only Christmas or Christmas to be, and of course Hanukkah and Iftar. It's also summer, so this is kind of summer break here, and in Oz. So they immediately called back their respective governments to pass various laws. The kinds of arms that were used in this horrifying attack were actually legal because they were not automatic or semi-automatic. And so they're both looking at rendering illegal the kinds of guns used and reconsidering how permitting is done. because the older man, the father, did have permits for the guns. And so they're reconsidering like the length of a permit. They're reconsidering how many permits per person. Because as far as I know, the permitting system in Australia does involve kind of frequent, I don't know how frequent, but check-ins with the police and local law enforcement. Like if you have a gun permit, you're on a registry and they're checking in on you. So they're going to look into, how long does that permit last? How often are they checking in on you? What kinds of things would get your permit taken away? And then, of course, rendering illegal more kinds of weapons. And that's going to happen immediately. The other thing that was really astonishing, so this happened on Sunday evening. Mm-hmm. Monday morning, I was in the CBD. CBD is the central business district. Downtown is what we would say. And at the bus shelters everywhere in the CBD, there were already, as of Monday morning, signs up saying, I'm not quoting it verbatim, but, we stand with Sydney, we stand with Sydney's Jewish community, we call out these horrific attacks, we need to come together, etc. This kind of real statement of solidarity and an acknowledgement of lives that were taken. And that was immediate. There's really close collaboration and connection between the Premier's office in New South Wales and community groups. There's like an entire interfaith coalition. And of course, like, I'm not trying to say nothing bad, there's like plenty of problems in Australia, but yeah, I was, even as much as I know about Australia, having worked there for a very long time and having lived there briefly, I was astonished at the rapidity of the response.
I made a noise when you were talking about the bus signs and the kind of just general coming together to embrace the Jewish community and call out those attacks and all that. It's like such a simple thing that you would think we can all come together on. Like the legislation part of it, yes, that would be amazing too. Some common sense gun laws would be amazing too. But just like here in America, everything becomes so politicized and we are so segmented that we can't even do that. We can't even just come together and in a moment of just tragedy like that. And so I'm happy to hear that happened. It makes me feel pain for the many shootings we have here that just don't get answered with any kind of solidarity and resolve to end the scourge of gun violence in our country. So that's not a question, that's a statement, but go ahead.
Yeah. I mean, I just want to go into that statement for 1 second. I agree with you 100%. When we say everything is so politicized and everything is so, I can't remember the second word you used.
I knew you were going to grab onto that one. As soon as I said that, I'm like, that's not really what I meant, but go ahead.
No, this is what I want to say. Everything is politicized, and sort of statements of basic decency that humans should show to one another are kind of impossible or seem impossible or anathema. And I happen to be flying, and on Qantas, there's free access to newspapers on their kind of entertainment page. And for whatever reason, they were subjecting me to the Australian, which is the right-wing rag that Murdoch owns. And every article was some permutation of, Albo has blood on his hands. This is Labor's fault. This is what you get for, allowing protests and allowing kind of an authentic expression of horror at what's happening in Gaza. And so there is an effort, don't mistake me, there is an effort to politicize it. There is a plan they're having this Advance Australia March. They have their own burgeoning white nationalist movement as they have everywhere else. And so it's not that it doesn't exist, it's that it is not the governing power.
Right.
And so the difference is that there's kind of a basic sense of decency from the people in power, but even from the opposition party, you're just like not allowed to get away with being as vile and as evil. And that isn't to say that no one's trying. I just told you some people are trying.
Mm-hmm.
But they haven't been able to kind of overtake the political system. And there's all sorts of reasons for that. They have compulsory voting in Australia. That's a big reason. They have a much, much stronger court system. They have a much stronger pre-existing social safety net. And so there's just kind of like more stuff in place that's harder to do away with. But the reason that they asked me to come, like the reason that I just spent 2 weeks there, is because they see the writing on the wall and they're not immune to these forces of the siren song of authoritarianism that has infected, you know, all the corners of the world.
Yeah. Well, that's, I mean, not comforting that it's everywhere, but you know, I want to kind of shift to speaking of just vile dialogue. The Rob Reiner comments that Trump made, and I don't want to amplify that, the absolute abhorrent trash. I'm not going to read them or post them or talk about them. I'm not going to share or repeat it. But it is a moment where Republicans are coming out, and it's really rare that they criticize the president, that they criticize Trump, and they certainly are, you know, rightfully so. So I guess I'm just interested in what I think Rob Reiner would really want, and that's how can we use this as a moment that shows the base, the MAGA base, how unhinged, immoral, and sick Trump really is.
Yeah, I think for the true base, the true believers, maybe I'm being overly cynical, and feel free to tell me that I am. The people who are the true believers, which is like around 20%, 30%.
Yeah.
I don't think there's any
not much movement there.
We're getting there with them, because this is their ideology, this is their belief system, the ability, you know, what
on
we
the
call
face of it, though,
motivated.
the Christian nationalists, like Christian principles, like how can you? Yeah, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt, but you know, the hypocrisy there is very evident to everyone, but probably not to that, you know, 30% that you're talking about. Yeah.
Yeah, and also I think it's important to remember that for that group, which I think is different to what I'll come to, where I do think there is utility, which is the conflicted, like the people who pinch hit, the people who maybe voted for him, even voted for him this time, who are kind of moving away. So I do think there's a point to make. I'm just like rounding out for the true believers, there is no hypocrisy. And the reason why there is no hypocrisy, and Ruth Ben-Ghiat has written about this really brilliantly in Strongman and in subsequent writing, what the strongman promises and offers is that the rules don't apply to him. A hypocrisy argument is an expectation that what you say on Monday is going to have some sort of accordance with what you say on Tuesday, and so on and so forth. That there is some sort of like through line around what you believe, and whether that's kind of avowed Christian principles, or whether that's, you know, you say that you don't want big government, but then in fact you are like climbing government up into people's uteruses and lives, you know, whatever. All of the kinds of hypocrisy that you and I are like very capable of seeing and pointing out. There is no hypocrisy for the strong man, because the rule of law is what the ruler says the law is. And so he's always following the rule of law because he picks the law.
Right.
And the ability to not have to abide by other people's rules and conventions, which is the promise, right, of drain the swamp, and I'm going to remake Washington, and I'm going to undo the status quo and the way that the world works. That's the attraction to the base. is that he gets to do whatever the F he wants because the base is angry that they feel that their lives have been upended and that they're hemmed in and that they're not allowed and that they're restricted.
They feel
And
powerless.
that's what, that they're powerless. And what he is offering them is that he is going to empower them, and he embodies that by holding absolute power. So I think back to, where there is kind of movement and room and whatever among the more conflicted. In other authoritarian regimes, the authoritarian usually enjoys extraordinary popularity, at least at the outset of their term. So right now, uncomfortably, a person like Bukele in El Salvador is, who knows what's really true, right? Because people probably terrified to answer the survey correctly. So there's probably a big margin of error here, but at least in reported surveys, it's around 90%. So even if 20% of that is false, that's still a lot of people who are very excited.
Right.
And, the same was true of Orban initially, although that's eroding. And historically, authoritarians are actually wildly popular for a time. And Trump, on the other hand, as everyone listening knows, just to reconfirm what we all share, is has never enjoyed actual majority support because of how challenging it is to vote, because, lots of people who are eligible don't vote and all the things, and is now kind of underwater, as we all know, not very popular, eroding even among the people who most recently voted for him or have supported him in the past. And I think that is significant, and that is important, of course. And I think it's so extraordinarily important that we not lull ourselves into the idea that I think we've been living in, which is that it's possible to vote our way to democracy. Because it isn't. We cannot vote our way to democracy.
Explain what you mean by that.
Yeah. So voting is critical. It's very important. I work in electoral politics. I care a lot about voting. I'm going to be busting my ass for 2026.
Right.
So please don't come at me. I am not saying voting is not important. Voting is important. Voting is important. Voting is important. Period. And our ongoing attachment to what I would call electoralism in the broader progressive movement, I think has been a real problem. If we were going to have voted our way to democracy, if voting was the way that we were going to exit this authoritarian trap, then it would have worked in 2018. It would have worked in 2020. It would have worked to the extent that we staved off the worst of the red wave in 2022. And I don't need to tell you, the cat came back the very next day, right? The voting didn't do it. The election didn't do it. And the reason why even defeating Trump himself in 2020 didn't do it is the same reason why the Law and Justice Party is back in Poland, is the same reason why we see this kind of pattern with authoritarian regimes. And it's because we have an economic problem that is masquerading as a political problem.
Okay.
And so, yes, we have got to kill it in the midterms. And that means extra super kill it because of all of the things the regime is doing to, not allow people to vote, to pitch a hissy fit like we've never seen before around results when they lose. If North Carolina judicial race was like the opening salvo, just imagine what it's going to be like. And everything that they're doing, because a political party tries to court your vote and an authoritarian regime tries to keep you from voting.
Right.
And that's what's going to happen. So as important as that is, the fundamental problem that we face is that democracy was supposed to be a promise, and that promise was supposed to be about economic equality and prosperity. And it didn't deliver. I would argue we haven't actually tried democracy in the United States, but we told people that we did. We told people that's what we had. We told people that's what we're going to protect. We told people that's what we're going to restore. And we have to be honest that people are pissed as fuck. And they're
Yeah.
pissed everywhere in the world. And unless and until we actually confront the underlying root problem, which is that a handful of billionaires have purchased themselves politicians to do their bidding, and the discomfort that that extends across political parties.
Yeah.
And yes, there are massive differences. And yes, they are two different entities. But the reality is that, you know, it's a pay to play system, especially in the United States. And people are struggling. And if they're going to believe that there is a politics of equality and prosperity and justice and liberty, then we actually have to deliver that to them.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's 100% dead on. And you and I have talked about this a lot over the number of years that we've been able to have these conversations that I'm so grateful for. But the way that, and you can correct me if this is a bad way to frame it, but the way that I say to people all the time is that these oligarchs, these billionaires have managed to convince us that it is a left-right problem when it's a top-bottom problem. And, you know, what we find when we actually go out and talk to people, you know, get out in the community, there is, if for people who aren't looking at us on YouTube, I'm putting my hands very close together. There's this much space between the things that we really value, that Republicans and Democrats, left and right, really value. We really care about many of the same things. Those who are hyper involved in politics think that we are much farther apart than we are, and we are obviously driven apart by otherizing and racism and all of the tricks that they do to get people to look at each other instead of who's really picking your pocket. So, having said all that, and having talked also about how important it is to win in the midterms, we're shutting the door on 25 right now. Thank you. Happy to do that. Happy to get 25 behind us and going into the new year. It's all hands on deck to win the House, like you said and articulated so well. We can't just 50+1 it. We have to win by a huge margin. It has to be an undeniable victory because of all of the shenanigans that they're going to pull, and the Senate may even be in play if the numbers hold up where we are right now. So. What are the baseline messages? And I know we've been talking a lot, so we'll try to keep it quick, but what are the baseline messages that we should all be amplifying coming into the new year? Like, obviously what we just talked about, you know, the oligarchs, the billionaires that are getting enormous tax credits while, you know, Republicans are taking away literal health care from people to pay for those, tax breaks. Healthcare is going to be a major issue in the midterms, just like it was in 2018. I think it's going to be probably the defining issue, but also affordability, people's pocketbooks. We hear a lot about that, but I want to hear from you. What's the best way to actually speak to those issues that, as you do so well, is inclusive, but also effective?
Yeah, I will do that. And I think we need to remember that November is still 11 months into 2026.
Right.
And in those 11 months, I'm going to make the world's most obvious prediction. They're going to do a lot of horrific things to people.
Yeah. It's going to be brutal.
Because that is the most reliable prediction a person could make. That doesn't feel like telling the future. That feels like narrating the extension of the present. This, like, electoralism fetish that I talked about before. I'm really frightened that once we turn the calendar and it's 2026, the work that we just got started doing, I'd argue, of resistance, refusal, and ridicule. I'm scared that the people engaged in that are going to be like, okay, election time. And I'm not trying to say not election time, but I am trying to say that, just to give you one for instance, the marches and the extraordinary movement that happened in the wake of the horrific murder of George Floyd over the summer of 2020 that we all remember, people marched from the street to the ballot box. Like, there is a clear and direct line, and the research backs up, between mobilization and search. So it's not either or, it's both and. And action begets action. Agency begets agency. The thing that keeps people away from voting is not, I don't know, I think I kind of like this guy, except for the diehard true believers who we are not going to move. We're not going to move them.
Right.
You're not going to move them.
Yeah.
Don't try. But the thing that we have to do is give people a sense of their own agency, and a sense that actually what you do matters and what you do can make a difference in your own life. And that on-ramp, that activation on-ramp, leads to voting, as opposed to just putting our, like, okay, now it's January, now it's 2026, like, let's just talk about the election, let's just talk about the election, let's talk. I think that that's a big mistake. And the reason why I think that's a big mistake is because, just to get real with ya, I think it's going to be very, very hard to push the message that we just need to elect Democrats. Because in 2024, what we heard in every focus group all year long was, you told us to turn out in 2020. You told us to turn out to protect our freedoms. You told us to turn out to protect abortion. You told us to turn out to make sure that everything was going to be okay and to stop this threat. We did turn out, and it didn't work. You didn't do anything. And obviously, I understand the Democrats are in the minority, but we're going to have to activate people by giving them a sense of their own agency, which happens through successful boycotts, which happens through successful marches, which happens through a successful sense of the collective and being part of something bigger. That's what swells a voting bloc. So I just wanted to give that preamble, because I think
building
it's
the
important.
movement, or continuing to build the movement, because it can't.
Yes.
And that's something that we've talked about a lot, where, we can get pretty far right now on how much people hate Trump, this regime, and everything that they're doing, and the fear they have, and the, shit we see with ICE in the streets and their neighbors being disappeared and all that. That will, as we've seen in the elections this last year, that will take us pretty far. But to really have some hope for systemic change that we need, so that's not the same status quo, but something that we can really build, you have to have that movement. You have to have that public sentiment, people really feeling like there is hope for meaningful change, and not just fixing something that's terribly broken.
And the power to demand it, that there's enough of us that the many can in fact defeat the money, because that's the name of the game.
Right.
So as far as messages with that preamble, basically very useful, just some tips. Never call this Trump thing the government. Don't call it an administration. Administration makes it sound sort of blandly inoffensive, like a continuation of previous right-wing governments. It's the government are the civil servants who, research the vaccines we're no longer allowed to have, pave our roads, who teach in our public schools. Like, there is a government, and the government is something that is positive and a force for good and social cohesion. What this is a regime, and you've been using that language yourself, specifically a regime of the bullies for the billionaires. That language is useful because it ties in that economic populism piece. It makes it clear, who is pulling the strings. And the bullies piece, we have found over and over in testing, is useful because we have to thread this needle between, yes, they are extraordinarily threatening, and they are not so scary that you should cower and not want to oppose them.
Right. Yeah.
And that's part of why ridicule is so important, and why, comedy and things like the inflatables, the inflatable frogs and the other animals, ridicule is an essential part of bringing down authoritarianism. It has been in like all places and times. So, regime
It's
of the
also
bullies for
just
the billionaires.
fun because you know how
It's also
much he
fun.
hates it. Yeah.
Oh, completely, completely. Um, we want to talk about how if you don't decide, they'll decide for you. This is our moment. Our time is now. The power is in our hands. Language like the many can take on the money. Language like this is about our freedoms, our families, and our futures, as opposed to trying to sell people on, like, if you just elect this person and this person and this person, because frankly, people don't believe that. They have to believe that they are in this sort of larger movement. And then also in these interim months until the election, like we said, these horrors are going to be happening, and we need to keep standing up. And so what I would offer, and this is a framework that we've created and tested, that we call Brave of Us. It's a campaign that we launched actually right around Thanksgiving. We had the folks at CASA had a really wonderful press conference in Maryland to talk about local law enforcement not collaborating and capitulating with ICE and Border Patrol. We just had a really incredible art exhibition, thanks to the NEA, at Art Basel in Miami, with this incredible, talented artist who did a Brave of Us exhibition. Hopefully next year we're doing an all immigrant designers Brave of Us show, thanks to Haitian Bridge Alliance at Fashion Week. We have to show, not tell, who we are and what we believe. We have to show, not tell, that we are too fabulous for fascism. Believe it or not, if you want people to come to your party, you have to throw a better party. And I
Right.
know that
Yeah.
given everything we said up until now, this may feel very incongruous, but nobody wants to be around a bunch of like naggy scolds. People want to be in a space that is magnetic. And I think the Mamdani campaign is obviously an exemplar of this.
Yeah.
You want to be a force that compels and draws people in, while also maintaining your own values and being stalwart in those, and recognizing that means, like any magnet, you're also going to repel. That's what a magnet does. It draws in, but it also repels the opposition. So it's really about, we're the ones we've been waiting for. We are the ones that are going to reclaim our freedoms. We are the brave of us. And it is brave of us to stand together in the face of this regime. Is it brave of us if we're reporters to always write the truth, no matter what the people in power want? It's brave of us if we're educators to teach the truth of our past. It's brave of us if we're lawyers to demand equal justice under law. It's brave of us if we're immigrants to make a way out of no way at all and to move heaven and earth for our families. And to really recast all of these actions instead of just merely being in resistance, where they define and we are up against them, to actually recategorize ourselves rightly as the brave of us, because America's supposed to be the land of the free and the home of the brave. And so we have to make it that way.
Amazing. That's extremely compelling. And I do have a lot of hope. I know what you mean about 26 coming and people thinking, okay, it's just going to be elections now. But we are building a movement here. We are, coalescing in a way that, I've been doing this work since Trump v1. That's when I joined in. And I saw us stand up to Trump in the midterms in 2018 with a lot of different siloed efforts and a lot of different groups kind of trying different things, but not necessarily working together. And since then, I have really seen us come together and complement each other and build this movement. So I have hope that we will be able to continue to do that. And I love the brave of us framing, but no surprise, you are the framing expert, and I always appreciate your work. Last question. We'll try to make it quick because I know you have to go, but it's the one that we always end with, your favorite. What gives you hope right now?
Can I be unfair and say I have lots of plan Bs? I get to work in lots of parts of the world, so, you know.
You got Australia to fall back on.
Yeah,
which,
I've got Australia. New Zealand's real nice.
Yeah.
They have an election next year, too, and hopefully they kick their conservative government to the curb. No, that's cheating. I know that's cheating. I guess what gives me hope is that we've been kicking the can down the road and papering over what is actually our problem. And that is a recognition that neoliberalism begets authoritarianism. That's just how it works. And when the basic premise that, you know, people who work for a living ought to earn a living is violated, and it's violated intentionally in a country this wealthy, this, you know, inordinately wealthy, something's got to give. And so maybe it sounds paradoxical, but I feel like people seeing underneath to the root of the problem, you know, the weed's going to keep growing if you don't pull it out by the root. So I guess what gives me hope is people demonstrating much, much stronger understanding. And we see this in focus groups. We see this in quant data. We see this in movement. We see this in kind of boycott as an answer in addition to other forms like voting and marching and so on. You know, if we're going to solve a problem, we at least have to be able to see it and name it and confront it. And so I guess what gives me hope is that we can bring ourselves to a place of a much, much more durable solution rather than just a like eking out small wins or not losses in the electoral space in order to have a government that truly looks like us, represents us, reflects us, and governs in our name, and not kind of a pashmina of less bad than the others.
Right. Thank you for all of your incredible work, Anat. Thank you so much for taking the time to talk with me so far away. I hope you have a really peaceful holiday. I'm really grateful for you, my friend. Thanks so much for being here.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you for joining us today. Don't forget that all the links for our actions are in the show notes, so don't just listen, click those links and take action. Please subscribe, rate, and review our show on Apple, YouTube, or wherever you're listening, and share our show with your friends and family members and make sure they are taking action to help us win. And if you're able to support our show on Substack, we'd be very grateful, and you will get an ad-free feed of our show as well. We are taking the next 2 weeks off for the holidays, but we'll be back in the new year with more Practivist Pod. Until then, don't forget, hope is in action.
Hold on, stay strong.